Welcome to today's webinar, Using Analytics to Boost the Value of Your QA Program, presented by experts from DMG Consulting and VPI. My name is Patrick Boats, and I'll be your host today. To avoid interruptions, all attendees have been placed in listen-only mode. If you have questions during the webcast, please type them in the box on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side of the screen. We'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of the webinar within the allotted 1-hour time period. We'll be requesting your feedback on a poll question during the webinar and a brief survey after the webinar, and thank you in advance for your participation. Contact Center Quality Assurance has been used to monitor and improve internal agent quality and compliance for the past 30 years. Traditional QA reached the end of a good long life. A far more better, effective alternative is now within your reach. The next generation of analytics-enhanced QA solutions is here. Utilizing analytics and workflow automation, the new QA technologies reduce manual steps required by most QA applications by 60 to 80%. Better yet, they take you straight to what really matters, delivering insight into critical business issues and opportunities to improve the customer experience and revenue. I'm pleased to introduce Donna Fluss. Donna is the founder and president of DMG Consulting, the leading provider of contact center and real-time analytics, market research, and consulting services. She has over 25 years' experience in helping end users build differentiated and cost-effective contact centers. Donna is the author of the Real-Time Contact Center and publishes many leading industry reports on contact center quality management and recording, performance management, desktop analytics, speech analytics, surveying, workforce management, unified communications, IVR, and hosted contact center infrastructure. I'm also pleased to introduce Mohan Nair. Mohan has been involved with the service industry for the past 15 years with cutting-edge and innovative companies like Microsoft, UPS, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and Arvado Services. He was most recently Director of Customer Delight Programs at IBM Lenovo, and prior to that, he was Vice President of Operations for HSBC Global Resourcing. He's a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and serves as a quality improvement consultant with VPI. VPI is the worldwide leader in analytics-driven contact center quality monitoring, performance management, and workforce optimization software solutions. Over 1,500 organizations in 50 countries globally partner with VPI to capture and analyze their multi-channel interactions to identify and solve the critical and customer experience issues. Customers include 1-800-Flowers, AAA, AT&T, Banner Health, CNN, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, IBM, and Delta Airlines. Today, Donna Fluss will share best practices on how to get more value from your current QA program. She'll discuss the differences between the old way of doing QA and the benefits of transitioning to a more analytically oriented method of quality assurance. Mohan will then introduce you to new analytics-enhanced solutions that are transforming contact center quality assurance and some of the key considerations when evaluating new technology. Now I'm pleased to introduce Donna Fluss.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Patrick. Folks, it's time to change how most of us are doing quality assurance. Now, the good news is that the majority of contact centers today are doing quality assurance. The interesting or possibly bad news is that most of us are doing exactly the same way we did 25 to 30 years ago, as Patrick just pointed out. Now, this is whether you're doing it totally manually or with a manually oriented quality assurance application. A great deal has changed in the past 25-plus years, not just the kind of phones and clothes we wear, fortunately, did change. And this is particularly in the area of analytics, and it's time for quality assurance to catch up. The need and purpose of QA has not changed, nor should it. Contact center managers and supervisors need to measure how well agents adhere to internal policies and procedures, which is the primary reason that we do QA. Managers also need tools to identify the underlying reasons why people call, the call trends. The question is how we go about getting the job done. Now, in the past, we had QA solutions which were basically automated evaluation forms. Supervisors had to find the calls that they wanted to evaluate, although even with the current generation of QA, we had a lot of different ways of doing that. Then, once we found the calls that needed our attention, then we had to find the appropriate QA evaluation form. Now, after that, it was, of course, time to listen to the calls and find the 10 to 20% of the calls that required our attention. And think about it this way. Think about a bell curve. When you're doing QA, generally you're catching things at the tail. So we're either catching the calls that are really good, where we should give credit and praise to our agents, or we're catching those things where there's a great opportunity to improve how it is the agent performs their job. Excuse me. Now, once we find these calls, and keep in mind we had to listen to a lot of calls in order just to find that 10 or 20%, we need to manually complete the evaluation form. So the entire process was, and pretty much remains, manual. If you would flip over to the next slide. Well, now we have QA-enabled solutions that can automate anywhere from 40 to 80% of the manual tasks that supervisors and QA specialists had to do in the past. Now, the new generation of QA applications come with a whole variety of analytical capabilities. For example, it has desktop, also known as screen analytics. And this is a wonderful application that's made its way into the workforce optimization or QA recording marketplace over the past couple of years. And what it does is it keeps track of everything that the agent does. It also keeps track of how their systems are responding. And the primary outputs of either screen analytics or desktop analytics is that it shows us where our agents need to improve how it is they're doing their jobs. It keeps track of every place that the agent's going, so we know what the calls are about. And just a nice little benefit for any of us who've faced off with IT groups over the past, however many years, it also keeps track of how all the supporting systems that we're using within our contact centers are responding. So it is a really valuable application that helps us improve quality and performance. And once it's installed, actually it's just a question of using the report. So highly valuable. Another analytical application that we have embedded within our WFO suite is speech analytics. And what speech analytics does is it gives us insight into the underlying reasons why people call. And then we combine those analytical capabilities and others. It's all brought together by workflow. And think about workflow this way. If you're a manufacturing environment, what the workflow application does is it brings the rest of the stuff, one step at a time. And every place that it goes, it adds another piece or more information. So by workflow enabling, we're able to automate a lot of the manual tasks that we had to do in the past. Let's take a look at the next slide. The concept of new QA is a bit like the new pretzel M&M. Now, I've got to tell you, M&Ms are probably my favorite candy. And when I first saw the concept of putting the pretzel into the M&M, I was a little bit hesitant. I mean, I love M&Ms, I like pretzels, but the two just didn't seem to be a match made in heaven. And I wasn't in any hurry to try it until I went to a party one day and accidentally picked some up, and it was very good, actually. Kind of a little bit Kit-Katish, or but pretty good. When we talk about analytics-enabled QA, we're not talking about giving up the tools, or for that matter, M&Ms, that tasted so good and that in this case worked really well in the past. Instead, what we're talking about is innovation that's going to make your job, the job of the QA specialist, the job of the manager, more rewarding while also improving the morale of your shop. So now let's talk through on the next slide how this all works and comes together. what you see is a classic QA cycle, almost classic, and does represent pretty much how people have been doing it for years. So classically, you actually begin the middle step there. It says enhanced QA process. It could be enhanced, but most of us begin by creating some form of a QA evaluation form. Once we have that evaluation form or multiple forms, then we've got to go through the process of finding our calls. We have to listen to those calls. Now, the surveying step is one of these things that DMG pushes strongly, but most organizations actually don't survey in the traditional process at that point. So all we have from QA is the internal perspective. At that point, you fill out the evaluation form, and hopefully you then coach. And by the way, it could be positive coaching, hey, keep up a great job, which unfortunately not a lot of organizations do because it kind of gets lost, but it's really critically important. Or you go up and work with people in terms of the opportunities that they have to improve the operating environment. Then you come up with your summaries, your monthly reports, you identify the actions that need to be taken. Generally throughout the process you've done some trending, but nobody takes it too seriously because it's not automated. And you share the actions, maybe yes, maybe no. Generally it's shared within your shop. But classically, you then begin the cycle again. Fine. Alrighty, so now we're going to go through the cycle, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to inject workflow and analytics. And I'm going to talk through the implications of embedding some very, very practical and helpful solutions into our traditional cycle. So what I'm also pointing out is, for example, screen analytics by itself is hugely valuable. But when you embed it with the QA cycle, it really takes QA to a whole new level and really does give you an opportunity to vastly improve how it is you're doing it by reducing a lot of the manual tasks that, seriously, workflow automation is much better at. So now let's go through the process again. So, of course, no matter what, we still have to create the evaluation forms. That process and step is not going away. So that remains the same. But now it comes time to look for the calls. And as we look for the calls, the system is going to find the calls that need our attention. So instead of our agents complaining that we're picking on them, which, by the way, in some cases, we are picking on them because we know they've got problems. Now we've got an automated process for finding the calls, and for that matter, emails, could be SMS, that require our attention. Alrighty, fine. So instead of listening to 100% of the calls to find the 10 to 20, now we only have to listen to 10 to 20% of the calls. So we do have to listen to those calls because once we find them, we need to listen to them because that's a critical step in doing the evaluation. Okay, good. For those calls where we have the internal view, let's use workflow automation to kick off the surveys and remind our customers who didn't respond to our initial request, if they've already done it, that we love their input on whether we satisfied them and met their needs, both in terms of the service as well as our products and services. So now we have an opportunity using workflow to remind customers, and we send them the survey. So that survey, if we get it, and we will get it in, it may only be 5% of the cases. It may even only be 3%, but it will be a lot more information about the customer perception of your policies and procedures than you had before. So now we have the external view from the survey. We have the internal view from QA, so we can fill out the QA evaluation form. Very, very important. Alrighty, so that's also mostly a manual step, except now we're using workflow automation to fill in the name of the agent, the customer, the account number, and a lot of stuff that, you think about it, you think it doesn't take that much time, but 2 to 3 minutes or as much as 5 minutes because you actually have to look it up and fill it in, that actually can translate into your lunchtime, which it does in a lot of cases. So just using the workflow automation for that is highly valuable. Alrighty, so now, classic process is we need to start coaching. And there is no replacement for one-on-one coaching. It is critically important to be able to go and talk to the agent. If you're a virtual environment, it means calling the agent. But that reach out is critically important when we do surveys of why people leave contact centers. the number one reason is actually because of lack of feedback. That reason is rated higher than salaries, by the way. So it's something that's very, very important. And people would prefer negative feedback to no feedback. But here again, let's use the workflow automation capabilities of the new generation of QA applications. We still need to give the personal feedback, but then complement it by having the system identify the appropriate coaching or e-learning courses and sending them to the agent, by having the system monitor and remind the agent to take the course, by having the system see how well the agent does when they take the little quizzes. And it is a good idea, by the way, to have quizzes in these type of coaching and e-learning sessions. And it's also important to tie back how the agent responds to the areas where, in the coaching sessions, to the areas where they needed attention. As a matter of fact, you can use the system to help you in terms of developing programs to improve agent performance. Critically important. So from there, then we can compile the reports and scorecards. And again, very different story when it's a system report versus something that's manually done. And then we identify the actions. Now, here's another place that the workflow automation makes a huge difference. In the contact center from QA, we know so much about what's going on within the organization. But when the call center manager goes to sales or marketing or operations or billing or R&D and says, hey, you've got a problem, they don't take us that seriously, partially because we've done it so many times before. So it's actually fair from both sides. But when it comes on a system report, the dynamic is extremely different, and they absolutely take it a lot more seriously. So the impact on the enterprise in general from the QA system, which was really only in the past used for the contact center, changes. So workflow automation gives us outstanding tools within the contact center, automating anywhere from 20 to 80% of the manual tasks that don't require the cognitive capabilities of a supervisor or an agent for that matter. But then on top of it, it goes well beyond the benefits to the contact center to benefits within the entire enterprise. So now let's get into the benefits. And let's talk about the traditional benefits of QA on the next slide. So when we implement QA, there's a lot of benefits that we get. There's a reason why QA is a mission-critical application and is probably one of the third or fourth most common applications that you'll find in contact centers. The core reason we do QA is not changing. It's just going to get better. So we're continuing to do QA because it gives us visibility into how well our agents adhere to internal policies and procedures. There's absolutely no question, and that is not going to change. It's just changing how it is we do it and freeing us from tedious tasks. We absolutely are going to continue to use QA to monitor script adherence. Again, one of the core reasons that we've done QA over time. And of course, it's going to identify agent productivity and training needs. Now, let's go back in time. When QA was first introduced, it was introduced as a quality assurance application. And then what happened is it didn't sell. But the vendors quickly realized that if you improve productivity, quality goes along. So QA is actually one of the one or two top productivity tools within contact centers. And how do we realize the productivity? Of course, the answer is by training and sharing with our staff things that they can do better, and for that matter, things that they do well, we share with others. So the traditional benefits of QA are going to remain. But now let's supersize it. And let's talk about the benefits that analytics adds to the traditional QA process on the next slide. As we inject analytics into the process, it gives us a lot more visibility than we had before. So when we're using screen or desktop analytics, it's showing us where our agents are spending their time and giving us insights into what it is the customers are calling about. So it allows us to automatically classify and rank the calls. So it's very, very important because the calls that need our attention will go to the top and we'll be able to address them on a much more timely basis. Now, workflow and analytics-enabled QA also allows us to do precision monitoring, and that's where, as I described, we use the application to find the calls or emails that require our attention so that we don't waste so much of our time listening to calls that fall into the bell of that curve. Now, that serves so many different purposes, including the next one, which is that it eliminates subjective analysis. Now, here's a real story. Many years ago, over 20 years ago, I actually when I was running a call center, I got called into court because we had an agent who claimed that we fired them unfairly. Well, we fired them because we fired this person because we gave this agent at least 10 tries and work with them in every way possible. But when you go into an administrative hearing, it's your word against the word of that agent. And in the end, unfortunately, there's no way to know. And the courts, this is a New York court, supported the agent's position because they just took the employee's position. It was just the way it was going to be. As a matter of fact, it didn't even go, didn't go through the full trial process. But if I had had an analytical application that showed that it wasn't my managers picking on this agent, that the system on a fully automated basis had identified the calls that required attention, there's no question that we would have won that case. Now, that's an extreme example, but there's, one of the biggest issues with QA applications is agents complain that we're picking on them. And as I joked before, sometimes we are. But when you're using automation to find the calls, it just totally eliminates that aspect of QA, which is pretty much the last remaining complaint that we have against QA. So it's critically important. Now, another thing that it does is it provides timely and actionable feedback to operations. If you've got a high-volume shop where your agents are taking 100 or more calls a day, if 2 days pass before you can get to the call and evaluate it and then get to the agent and provide them feedback, there's a chance the agent's going to remember. But, a couple hundred calls down, it's really hard to remember. But if all you're doing is listening to the calls that need attention, you're going to be able to provide that feedback on a more timely basis when the agent's much more in tune and remembers what it is you're talking about. So it also changes the dynamic of the coaching session. And the agent's going to be a lot more open to feedback on things that make sense to them. The analytics and the workflow also help us to do more of a cradle-to-grave monitoring of the entire customer relationship. And that's also critically important, not just for the contact center, but for the enterprise overall. And then on top of it, using this form of automation, we have been able to identify new revenue opportunities and customers at risk. And if we intervene on a timely basis, it's very different than if we intervene a couple of days later when they've already made their decision to, open another credit card, open another bank account, open, go get a different form of insurance, for example. So critically important to have this information on a much more timely basis. Well, we have the old stuff, and it's not going away. But now we're adding more to it and making it even better than it was before. And it was good before. If you haven't tried new analytically oriented QA, if you haven't looked at it, I strongly suggest that you take a look. And keep in mind, it's not as if you have to throw out the old stuff. You don't. You're not throwing away your best practices. You're not throwing away your processes, your QA evaluation forms. Instead, what you're doing is simply injecting some new capabilities into that process that will streamline the process, eliminate the annoying steps for the managers and supervisors and QA specialists, and give your folks more time to do what it is they signed up to do, which is to work directly with the agents or the customers. Well, now I'm going to pass the call to Mohan Nair, VPI's QA Professional Services Leader. Mohan?
Thank you, Donna. Before we move on to Mohan, I'd like to launch a poll. If all of you could participate, I'd greatly appreciate it. The poll is, what is your primary method used to QA your evaluations today? So if you could all take that poll, we'll give everyone a minute or two to answer that. Give us some good insight as to where we all are today as an industry. All right. And about 80% of everyone voted so far. We'll give 10 more seconds, and then we'll show the poll result. All right, so we're going to share the poll results. It looks like about 10% of you use side-by-side live monitoring. 27% of you use remote live monitoring of the call. 35% use some sort of commercially available automated QA software. 19% are using a homegrown QA system, and 9% outsource their QA to a third party for remote monitoring. So thank you very much for your participation there. And Mohan, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thanks a lot, Donna, for positioning the role of quality assurance tools in today's business environment. And she's right. In terms of succeeding in today's competitive business environment, it requires constant innovation and execution of new strategies. And organizations are looking for ways, whether it's through sharing best practices and analytics, is one of those things that will enhance your QA program. And as Donna has mentioned, it is actually one of those critical components in the whole enterprise that will help senior executives make business decisions in terms of the overall customer experience. And we all know that in today's competitive business environment, it is going to be critical. So we'll go on to the next slide. One of the things that the positioning of quality is really trying to understand what are the goals and objectives of the enterprise of the organization. And the contact center is really positioning itself today in a very strategic position, and it helps drive to answer some of those questions, whether it's first contact resolution, driving down handle time through multiple channels, and costs. Especially in today's economy, cost is one of the critical components in running and managing a contact center. And the other point is customers today have many choices in taking a look, and loyalty today is not as it was in previous years. So those are the things that many organizations are looking at closely in terms of allowing quality help them in making some of the voice of the customers being heard. And the other thing is trying to understand what are the opportunities that are missed, whether it's in a sales environment, whether it's in a collections environment. And last but not the least, there's a drive towards the compliance side in terms of some of the non-negotiables for transactions that occur within the organization. And there are a lot of federal laws and regulations coming through, and a lot of modifications, and it is very important to know how the impact is from a risk management side as well. So we'll just go into some of the examples that we're going to show where quality, once you've defined what they are, to actually help drive that KPI for the CEO or the contact center manager. Well, one of the things that I share with quality analysts and folks in the contact center is really trying to understand what is our collective knowledge that we have. I find that going to the quality meetings as an executive in my previous life, I walked away with a lot of information to help drive business decisions. And before we embark on a quality program, let's take a look at what we're doing already well. And there are a lot of things that we don't need to change, as Donna had mentioned, is to try and figure how we can enhance certain things that we're already doing. So this is a classic example of a chart that I did. Was let's pick the low-hanging fruit. Let's take a look at some of the things that we can use, tools in the quality area to help you make certain decisions. And then as you get deeper and deeper using analytical tools to help drive your business decisions and save time and money for your quality department, you can see how the statistical tools can help, driven by more training that you're going to invest in the quality team. And then as a result, you will find that you are head and shoulders the best in class through your internal practices that are driven by the voice of the customer, and the whole customer experience really expands. Next slide, please. So fundamentally, we're going back to review some of the notes that comments that Donna had made. Traditional contact center practices in the quality has been taking a look, hunting for calls, and it is a very cumbersome and lengthy process. I know, talking to and having done this myself, to find those select 20% of calls that really make a difference was hard, and it took a lot of time to find those. On the right-hand side, you'll see the best practice calls that are of high value from certain parts of our segmented customers, high net worth customers, or high value calls. And conversely, on the left-hand side, you'll see some of those calls that, maybe we could have done better. What are the things that we can do to eliminate things that agents are doing? It could be a broken process within your organization, within the contact center. It could be maybe a poorly trained agent. It could be a number of things that you will gain insight in actually using analytics to help you select those calls. And I'll walk through some scenarios in how that can be achieved. And there are a lot of organizations, a lot of tools out there that you can use to minimize the quality of time spent looking for these calls. Next slide, Patrick. So traditionally, if we use as an example, a quality analyst is monitoring an agent that takes roughly about 3,600 calls a month, and it is true that the sampling rate is not really a statistical sample of what really transpired in the life of that agent in terms of the calls that they did or they provided service for. And if you look, when you're going into the new method of how we're actually proposing, and a lot of organizations are doing that, by just sampling the same amount in a targeted fashion, your sampling rate just goes up. You can either get, on the left-hand side of that earlier diagram, the worst-case scenario calls, or you can also target best-in-class calls that you can actually use as a case where you're going to train your other agents. So your sampling rate just went up. What this allows the contact center manager and the contact center quality team to do is they're going to gain better accuracy, gain more insight into some of the operations as to what's impacting the overall customer experience, and they can be able to relay that back in a manner to see some of the trends that are driving customer behavior. This allows the team to be a critical component in the whole equation. And as Paul Stockford, the chief analyst, says, is, we have a tool here that is revolutionizing the analytics world through our Fact Finder. And it delivers significant value in a very rapid period of time and helps identify areas through business intelligence information. So we're really proud of that desktop analytics on behalf of VPI. So here's an example. As an agent goes through a particular scenario, they go to the General tab and they start taking the information down. Now what happens in the back end, there's a whole series of activities. The analytics, the intelligence behind this captures critical information that is predefined by you as to what is important to your business. So as this information is captured, you'll see the screen and the voice capturing the story, so to speak. And as soon as the agent is completed, what you're going to see is the whole interaction is actually captured in your database. So you're going to find all this order information containing critical information about that particular customer that you define, the order value and the type of call, the nature of the call, that is oftentimes not captured in the traditional way that it's done. So here's a critical element that you can use to help drive business and to help drive agents' performance that could be used in the coaching that Donna was talking about. All right. So this scenario here is typical when we go into organizations and we're talking about analytics and how you can use this to help drive future processes, and varies. Different industries have different fields that they deem as important to them. Sales, for example, you'll see information that are sensitive, information that is critical. In the service area, what we found is comments, certain key comments that they put down that is critical to help drive your business. Credit card information, as we know today, the importance of credit card information, personal data is critical as well. So we need to ensure the customer that their information is retained in a safe and is not shared with third parties as well. In my previous example, I was talking about support case. I was managing a support center, and this was really important in terms of customers calling for their warranty status and the case severity. Collections, as you know, we talk about the efficiency of the collections department in terms of collecting and how they are collecting. The financial information is also critical. Insurance and healthcare are also one of those scenarios that we talk about where it contains sensitive customer information. In the trading contact centers, we are talking about high volume and high transactions that contain information. It helps quality teams figure out and pinpoint with laser-like precision areas that they can focus on, a stock symbol that they can help identify to focus their coaching efforts. And again, last but not the least, public safety and security. This is a big issue in terms of trying to identify certain key fields that are important for the team to identify for improvement or identify for opportunities to coach. So we have a tool here that can tag all kinds of information within your CRM solutions. Using this, the analytics engine will actually give you that output that Donna was talking about. And in this part about safeguarding customer information, which is becoming a hot topic, you can actually see in this transaction certain fields that you can block out, PIN numbers, credit card information, sensitive customer information, patient information, and it'll lock it down and deem it as sensitive. And you identify those interactions, those attributes in your defining stage of identifying what type of interactions you want to protect on behalf of the customer, the client. And oftentimes, most organizations, they look for this when they're doing an internal audit. And if you have a system like this, not only your quality team gets kudos for it, but also from a compliance perspective, the auditors are also happy, and regulators. Right back. Next slide, please. So here's a situation. In the past, Johnny Agent used to take a call. We had calls coming in. It was captured, and we have a voice recording of a particular point in time. Well, that gave us half the story. We didn't really know what Johnny did to process that transaction or serve the customer. Now we have these audio and video files that are able to capture another segment of the conversation, and you have data, rich data, insightful data that goes through this assembly, and it serves all the transactional information in a complete string, a story from end to end of what really happened with that customer. And more importantly, it tells you through what channel you can string together, whether they came through a different channel, whether the call was transferred to another department. You will be able to string together a total customer experience and be able to, with laser-like precision, come up with solutions, break broken processes, identify how you can enhance the whole customer experience through this new analytics engine that we're really talking about here. And this really happens behind the scenes that helps the agent do their job a lot more efficiently, a lot more effectively. And if you're looking at certain areas in terms of what you want to deem as high-value interactions based on our experience with customers, and in my previous roles, first contact resolution is becoming very hot, and you can look at certain behaviors or certain activities that delay first contact resolution. It could be repeat calls. Why is this customer calling us back on the same ticket? You can take a look at why is this customer choosing our competitor by looking at these fields that are already populated there and based on the disposition codes. This analytics engine is very powerful, that if you can actually identify and classify these interactions in these buckets, you're able to precisely help senior managers, senior leaders actually make business decisions. And this is where the role of the quality team has really escalated to a level than in previous years, to a more strategic role. Next slide. And so as we're talking about these, we're going to be coming to how can you, using this insight, now that we have gathered that information, it helps when the quality evaluator comes in. These high-value calls are behind the scenes gathered, collected, and put in buckets and served in a timely manner to the quality analyst, the quality evaluator, to do what they were hired to do. They can actually look at these calls based on the rules that you defined earlier, and they can go about focusing on these calls. As a result of this, what you're able to do is you're able to identify any workflow issues, track what are the areas, the fields that the agent is having difficulty with. It's not surprising that, when you're looking at desktops, in the past, there were many applications that are cumbersome for today's agent to do their job. So that's one insight that you can help drive business decisions to make the agent more efficient. And it gathers all this in a very seemingly intelligent, intuitive way that you can target certain responses in terms of coaching to a particular question, to a particular competency, and track their success as you go along. And this is the form that is critical, and they change. You can modify and improve as each campaign or each scenario changes. So using analytics, it can be very powerful. And which goes to the next slide, really, is talking about how can we drill it down a little bit more. So the agent was doing this call poorly, and where did he or she drop the ball? So what happens is you can precisely take a look at a particular question that he or she was not performing as to your expectations, and you can send precisely to that particular question a coaching tip, a coaching moment to their desktop with an email, with messages, or you can send a quick 3-minute video to their desktop to kind of say, hey, why don't you take a look at this? You did not do well in this particular question. And that's how it works. It's a very collaborative nature, especially in today's digital environment. Everything is coming fast and furious, and talking to agents in the field out there, they really appreciate this kind of quick coaching, what we describe as quick coaching moments, and it helps. So they're able to make course corrections along the way in a very high volume, high capacity manner to a specific skill, to a specific competency. And that's where it has actually come today. All right, Patrick, the next one, please. So now that we are talking about coaching and we're talking about skill development, we are actually looking at how we can enhance the agent experience. A little over 10 years ago, we found that attrition seems to be a problem where not a lot of people prefer working in a contact center. Well, that has changed. It has become the nouveau job in certain parts of the world. It's a profession, and as a result, training and coaching and e-learning are becoming the buzzwords. So how do we make it more efficient and join the crowd? Well, we have tools today to help folks that are joining, especially the Gen Y folks that are joining our workforce. They love this, and talking to some of them, they enjoy the quick e-learning courses that you can actually link with your workforce management teams to set aside time for these quick coaching moments and give them these tips. This supplements already the classroom training and the coaching. So you see, in the life of an agent, it's very dynamic. They're getting coaching, they embrace it, and they love it. So why wouldn't you not attempt to try something innovative and creative? And it's a very small price to pay to give them quick coaching moments. The next slide really will put it all together and talk about what this means at a senior level, at a team leader's level, at an employee level. You can actually combine a couple of things. You can put together real desktop tickers, sort of like the wall boards that we see in today's contact centers. But more importantly, this becomes personal, because now every agent, I wish I had this information many years ago, where I find that most agents are driven internally to perform the best that they can. You have a small percentage of folks that what we call not a good fit for the contact center, but I found that the introduction of desktop tickers made a huge difference in terms of their motivation levels, in terms of linking this to compensation. And you will see managers love this, where they're able to give quick messages to desktops, and I really am a big proponent of this. More importantly, in terms of doing yearly reviews, this is a great tool. You can do it on a daily basis, you can do it on a weekly basis. It takes away the cumbersome work of compiling copious amount of paper for the business analysts to put together, and you actually save paper, really, printing ACD reports, pivot tables, compiling them, and here the back end work is already done. You sit down, you can do it by daily, weekly, monthly basis based on the KPIs that you define for that particular agent, for that particular group, and it gives them a snapshot of how they're doing. And I believe that people really want to know where they stack up in the entire organization, and it drives a continuous improvement culture within the organization, and it's a fantastic tool to have. And on the next slide, what I'm going to talk about is the other outcomes to it. Is you're also able to look at graphs. You can slice it and dice it whichever way to suit your needs as a team leader, as a supervisor, as a senior executive. I mean, I look at reports. When I was managing a contact center, I had to wait. There's a time period that I had to wait a week to get reports like this, and it took a lot of time for the business analysts to prepare these reports, and I feel sorry for them. Here you have a great tool using analytics and the data that is collected behind the scenes to enhance not only the senior manager but also the team leader and supervisor to make certain course corrections along the way, and give insights to other folks outside of the contact center and saying, hey, you know, your marketing campaign really was working well. Good job. What did you guys do? Because we saw a spike in call volumes on this day of the week or this month of the year. So this is a great tool. It gives a visualization in terms of what's happening within your contact center in a very dynamic environment. So I really love this part of the analytics output. Go ahead, Patrick, the next slide, please. And as a result, you'll see these reports are really not the only thing that helps. What helps is also the management team that's taking a look at it. You can also see trend lines. You're able to use that as your internal business intelligence to take a look at possible sales opportunities. You can take a look at handle times. So you can create the quality team now that they have saved a significant amount of time, that they're no longer hunting and pecking. Now, the true use of the quality team, or the workforce management team in this case, can be used at a more strategic level in terms of utilizing the hours, and they love it, where it's no longer policing, although you do some part of it, but you're really in the performance management, performance enhancement role now. So you can use this for some business insights as well. And the agents love it because they are also part of this whole equation. So you can send out messages and alerts to track your team's performance, and your enterprise as a result benefits because you have somebody actually drilling down and looking at the data. That's so critical that oftentimes senior managers like myself in the past, I didn't have time for. So I would encourage people to try this if you haven't already are. The next slide, please. To summarize, analytics is here. It's just a matter of how you want to approach it, I would say start off with the low-hanging fruit and try it, test it, and pilot it, and you will find that you'll make significant improvements along the way. And share that. Share those best practices along the way. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mohan and Donna. You did a fantastic job. And now I'd like to open it up to questions. If you have any questions, please type it in the dialog box. We do have several questions. I'd like to start with this first one. This one is directed towards Donna. What's the difference between old and new QA, and where do we start?
Well, the quick answer is the goals are the same. What's different is we're using workflow technology to do what technology is good for, which is to automate manual processes. In terms of where to start, one step at a time, and my suggestion is look at a desktop, a screen analytics application, and add that to your current operating environment. That would be step one. Up there in terms of step two would be adding performance management.
Great, thank you, Donna. Another question, this one's also addressed to you. What are the benefits and savings we can expect from using analytics with QA? Well,
that's a great question, because there's both hard and soft benefits, and you know, I'm going to start on this, but maybe and you can make it real after I put together the categories. The benefits fall into benefits for supervisors and managers and QA specialists. So, most important, if you're using screen analytics or speech analytics to find the calls for you, just that, and using workflow to automate the process of filling in some of the basic stuff in the evaluation forms, you're absolutely going to be able to cut somewhere between 20 to 80% of the time that you previously spent just finding calls. So now the question becomes for the supervisor, well, does that mean we can eliminate supervisors? The answer is no. Over the past 15 years or so, supervisors have been pulled in so many directions, not what they were actually put out into the field to do. So what this does is gives supervisors and QA specialists an opportunity to get back to what it is they want to do, which is helping agents and their customers. So, but you've got quantifiable benefits there. You've also got quantifiable benefits because of the timeliness of input to your agents and because of timeliness of input to other operating areas. So you've got some call deflection or email deflection that's also going to go on. These are just two of the top categories. There's a lot more because it also ties into reduction in transfers and holds and improvements in FCR. So with that, Mohan, do you want to make this real with some examples?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I support that that idea simply because as a result of using speech analytics, in my previous environment, it was a help desk environment, we were able to shave $40,000 in annual costs. That was a full-time equivalent that was doing this business analyst work for me and my team. As a result of doing this, what we found was we were able to deploy her to do more business intelligence stuff, and Donna was talking about surveys as well. We were also involving her to do this, and we were at a risk of losing her to a competitor, and because this savings was realized, she was able to stay with us and provide more ongoing support to our team, and we were able to retain her. In another role, we're going to talk about process improvements. So overall, the benefits are huge. You can start quantifying them incrementally as you go. Not to mention that the employees are going to love this this new enhanced way of doing business.
Okay, thank you. Another question. This one's targeted to you, Mohan. How does our QA form change with more targeted QA? And this could be for both of you, actually.
Oh, that's a great question. The way I look at it is when I was working and QA forms were developed, they were primarily pretty much the who, the what, the when. With analytics-enabled QA, you can create targeted QA forms specific to what you deem as important within your organization for major issues you're trying to solve, real business issues, instead of relying on a bunch of calls for everything using one QA form. You can have a QA form for repeat calls to track first contact resolution or customer complaints. You can have a canceled order QA form to track missed opportunities or promises to pay that are not being kept in a collections environment. You can have a compliance form to see how many are actually adhering to the Privacy Act or certain HIPAA requirements. And you know what this does is it helps gather important information to not only score agents, but also helps answer the question about the how and the why, and identify key areas for process improvements and efficiencies that you want to gain. And more importantly, you're going to enhance the overall customer experience by doing this.
Right.
Donna, do you have any?
Yeah, you know, keep in mind, the original reason why QA was introduced, once, in terms of the messaging, was actually to improve productivity, right? And so what you can do when you have the analytics is you can zero in more effectively on the areas that you want to zero in on. But there's so many different ways that QA can and should be used today, which it's not being used because we don't have the automated output, the analytics that we need. There are some organizations using the new analytics-enabled applications that now have various groups doing different things. And I'm not talking about building empires or lots of people, but there'll be one group who does the traditional QA, and there'll be another group that's zeroing in on some of these very specific areas, which in some cases, by the way, is either looking for new product ideas and or trying to address some very specific defaults of faults in products, and or for, one of the hottest areas is to concentrate on reducing transfers and holds. So, it's not that Mohan and I and Patrick think that this is great stuff. It's been a welcome addition to a critically important function. So QA is not going away. It's just that the new analytics are giving us some tools that we've desperately wanted for years. Patrick?
Thank you, Mohan. Another question here. When using QA to target and analyze the pain points and development opportunities, are you also, as a QA specialist, able to celebrate successful agents?
I'll start that one. Oh yes, please. One of the top things that people do wrong in QA, old or new, is that we don't spend enough time giving praise and sharing best practices. So to begin with, it allows us to zero in on these great calls much quicker when the best practices that the agents have come up with can be really beneficial to others. So, absolutely. Mohan?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Involving the agents in this process is critical as well. And like the adage goes, what gets rewarded, what gets complimented, often always gets repeated. And this is where you need to link paycheck to purpose and try and make sure that you also celebrate and hype up the good calls. It's not all doom and gloom, so you have to have a balanced approach in how you use QA strategically within the organization.
Which is another reason, by the way, why balanced scorecards are so very important, because then it literally forces supervisors to look at the strengths as well as just the weaknesses.
Right. One question I can help answer, actually two. Are the slides going to be available? And yes, we will send you these slides. We'll also send you a link to the recorded webinar. And then another question came through are the applications web-based, or do they need to be installed on each desktop? And they are indeed web-based, so you don't need to install them on the desktop. And if you have moving towards voice over IP, you can typically record the conversations or the interactions at one location, even if you have remote agents and remote branches and other offices across the world. So it's a neat time for us, and the ability to centralize quality monitoring and make sure it's transparent across all of your departments and offices is now possible. So, it looks like we're kind of running out of time here. So for those questions we weren't able to answer, we'll be sure and get back to you with those answers. But we greatly appreciate your time today, and thank you, Mohan and Donna, for a wonderful presentation, and we look forward to the opportunity to working with you in the near future. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us for any questions on best practices or solutions. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful afternoon.